Golden Hardware, I feel like every time I've interviewed you before, I was like, when are you going to have a tag title run? When are you going to get together?
I thought you meant the microphone here.
We were talking earlier about how lightweight microphones are.
This is very progressive. Yeah. It's finally here. We finally got you two with the tag belts. How does it feel to have finally kind of got somewhere that so many people have demanded for so long?
Okay. It feels nice.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, you could end it there. In short, it feels nice. But to expand on that slightly, I'll say that given the history with he and I think it's obviously doubly or triply, quadruply special when you take into account the factors that got us here, or how we got these. You know, at WrestleMania in the main event together with one another. You know, as everyone knows, we started out together 20 years ago. So when you factor all that in, it's almost like storybook type things, you know. So I think it's bigger than just winning the tag team championships. I think, and people recognize that. I think that's what's making this particular tag team championship reign special to the audience, because they know the story, they know the backstory, they know how and why winning these was so special for us.
Yeah,
you know?
And as you mentioned, the significance of it being a tag team main event at WrestleMania that had never been before, with the belts, I should mention.
Yeah.
Like, winning them as part of a grand story, that means much more. So, like, now that you have them, what does that mean for you moving forward? You want to help bring other people into the picture to lift the division? Is there something stories you want to achieve? Like, how do you see that?
Well, so one of the things that I was concerned about before winning them was that when we did get them, I want to live up to the Usos title reign, because they did a lot for these titles. They worked very hard to get them to the point where they could main event WrestleMania, and that's a lot of credit goes to them for that. So honestly, I don't feel like we've really so far in our run, I don't think we're anywhere near that. I really want to work very hard to once we're all said and done with these titles, and somebody else takes them from us, I want to run to be talked about in the same vein as the Usos. So that's a challenge in itself, because man, they did really incredible, and those guys are, if anything, now finally they're getting their flowers, but they've been, in my opinion, underappreciated for a long time. So that was a big concern to me. Like, I want to live up to the work they've done, and we're obviously working our heart out to try to make sure that happens. So I guess that's the one concern for us, in that part of it, is just make sure these titles stay at the forefront of the stories and keep being as important as they've been the last few months.
Yeah, retain that value. Thank you. And that's the thing as well. That Saudi Arabia match was another great beat in the Bloodline story. Awesome. That moment for you, even before the match began. Yeah, right. And I know that you guys hadn't been to Saudi before that. So how much more special was it that you got to kind of, it was much more than just a wrestling match in many ways, I felt.
Yeah, that was a pretty big deal for me for a number of reasons, but that whole trip was really, really, really remarkable. I guess on some level, even as a child, right, being an Arab or Muslim growing up, and never really seeing a positive representation of that in media or whatever, right? I always just assumed that if I ever got to WWE, I'd have to play like a terrorist or something like that. Yeah. I don't know if you can use that, but you know what I'm saying. But because that was just the perception, and that was the portrayal of Arabs and Muslims on television.
Yeah.
Never mind WWE, just in media. So it was always sort of a thing in the back of my head, like, man, I'd love to change that one day.
Yeah.
So to be able to kind of really embrace that, and for the fact that even a major premium live event like that was coming, and it wasn't just sort of like those early Saudi Arabia shows felt very not WWE-ish.
Yeah.
They felt like, here is a WWE show taking place somewhere else.
I agree.
And we happen to be able to watch it. But now that was just a seamless part of the show. It was, like you said, a progression in the story with the bloodline and everything else, and it just so happens to be in Saudi Arabia. So for that to converge with this wonderful story that I've been lucky enough to be a part of for the last year, for that to kind of converge with this moment of me being able to kind of come before my people, or whatever you want to call it, but to be there and to have that sort of return and under those circumstances was very, very special.
Yeah. We had a lot of love for the Usos a minute ago. If Sami and Kevin couldn't be the ones to dethrone Roman, Would you like to see Jey or someone like that? Yeah.
So either Jey or Jimmy. I think both those guys deserve the world, and both those guys would be fantastic Universal World Champions, whatever you want to call that title now. Forget what they say, but I think they'd be a shoe-in for that spot. They'd do great at it, and honestly, with the way everything's progressed and the new heights they've reached, it certainly wouldn't look out of place. So I think that would be a great idea for sure.
What do you think? Who do you think should defend Roman?
You can have it back.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think from a character and a story perspective, it does make sense to see Jimmy or Jey do it at this point. I think a lot of characters have kind of come along throughout the last 3 years that could have been a very fitting ending.
There was a few.
There was a few. I think I was one.
Yeah.
I think Cody was one. I think even Drew to a certain extent. Maybe not totally because of the story, the broader story.
Yeah.
But I'm saying there's been a couple of moments and a couple of people, and even Kevin, could have been points where there's a little bow on the story, the culmination of this whole thing. Mm-hmm. But it does seem at this point, after everything else, that Jimmy or Jey would be the most fitting for the story.
I have some quick fire to finish on, right, for you guys. You can take that.
Okay.
There you go. When was the last time, and who were you starstruck by?
The last time was probably, and it was several years ago, but first time I met Shawn Michaels, because he's the reason I do this. So the first time I got to meet him, I was really, really just couldn't believe I got to meet him, couldn't believe I got to. And now, now see him every couple of weeks, every few months, and he acts like one of our peers, but to me, he's always going to be Shawn Michaels, so it never gets old.
What about you?
It's a non-wrestling answer.
Sure.
A few years ago, I was at a rock concert, a punk rock concert for a band called The Interrupters. I was there with Corey Graves, and we were in their dressing room somehow, and Fat Mike from NoFX, if you know who that is. Pretty niche audience here. He's a really, really famous punk rock singer, and he just walked into the room. And because I had no idea he was going to be there, I was like, oh my God. It just kind of took me aback a bit. So I know, not a pretty niche answer. You have to be really into punk rock to kind of appreciate that one. But that was the last time it was like, oh my God, that's that guy I've been listening to for so many years. Yeah. And it kind of took me aback.
I mean, Bianca's was Kelly Rowland in a corridor. So
there you go.
That's a pretty good one. Most expensive purchase since you joined WWE?
We kind of saw Matthew McConaughey backstage once, right?
Yeah, we didn't get to.
Kind of?
We didn't get to actually
didn't get
meet
to talk to him because there's a line of 17 people trying to get his attention.
But it was
so
like, that's Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. Wow.
That would be a big deal.
I guess that's something.
It counts.
Counts, yeah.
You're in the same place. Most expensive purchase since you've joined WWE?
I'm not going to talk about that. That's a weird question to ask.
Yeah.
No bags, trainers?
It's not for you to know.
Yeah.
What about...
I mean, a house.
A house, yeah.
That's a great purchase.
Right,
yeah.
Most people say the house, which is right. Thing you hate about the gym is a particular exercise or anything like that you don't like going to do?
I don't like the doors. So
he doesn't like the entrance.
I don't like the entrance, so I just don't go.
About what's the question here? Is it about the process of working out or like actual gym things that happen?
That you don't like, yeah.
Well, of course I don't love doing legs, but I have to. But I'm like, oh man, this is going to be sore for 3 days now and whatever. But yeah, legs, but they're fun to do. But they come with a heavy price.
Favorite place to travel to perform? Don't have to say UK.
Oh man, that's just tough. But obviously, going back to Canada every time is, it's a special treat for us, and the crowds are always pretty phenomenal. So, if we're talking, I know it's kind of going back home, but that's still, we don't get to perform there as much as we wish. So, Canada's top of the list for me for sure.
It's very hard for me to answer this question. I get asked a lot, like, where's your favorite place you've been? And I like a lot of places, so it's very, very hard to choose. I don't
explore a lot, don't you? When you're
for sure. I make a point of it actually. And the UK, I've been coming here for a while. I know you said don't say the UK because but it is very special for me to be here. Europe in general, but this South America, Japan, Saudi Arabia, wherever, Canada, Montreal. I really appreciate being everywhere. Everywhere is kind of great in its own way. You know what I mean?
You're ever the diplomat, Sammy.
Well, but I'm being very honest.
I know.
It's not. I wish I could give you a concrete answer. Say like, I just was saying in a different interview how I love wrestling in Santiago, Chile. I think they might be the best crowd in the whole world. But that's not to say that I don't love being in other countries and performing in front of other audiences.
Very last one. Who made you laugh the most during your WWE tenure backstage? Who's Joker in the locker room?
For me, it's CJ Parker, who's now known as Juice Robinson. Probably the funniest person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh man, that's such a tough one. I don't know. I guess I'm going back to NXT as well, but Adrian Neville, who's now known as Pac, we used to have a lot of laughs together, and I really miss him. Yeah, he's a great
Newcastle man.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah. Is that it? Is that
Newcastle man?
Yeah. He loves his Toon Army. He loves them. Yeah.
I wouldn't have called Neville.
Yeah.
I'd love to know that.
Yeah. So I really miss him a lot, and we used to have a lot of laughs together. That's the first one that comes to mind.
Where I finally do get in the locker room with Roman and we hit it off and all that kind of thing. Whether that would have happened while Vince was in charge or not, I don't know. I just know it didn't happen while Vince was in charge, and then Hunter ended up taking over, and about a month or so later, that's where we ended up. So, whether it's coincidental, whether it's not, whether the trajectory would have been the same or not, I don't think it would have gone exactly the same any way you cut it, because those are two different people with two very different visions.